The mountain air above Echelon Command carried a cold stillness that felt older than humanity itself. Aria Dren stood on the stone terrace overlooking the valley, the wind tugging faintly at her dark hair. Below, hidden beneath granite and cloud, Earth's most secret installation hummed with restrained power. Months had passed since her return. The tribunal, the exile, the storm, all of it had turned into a legend spreading faster than any fleet. She'd tried to fade into training routines, into silence again, but the galaxy wouldn't let her rest. Behind her, the door opened with the sound of pressurized air. Ambassador Kieran Holt stepped out, holding a sleek tablet. His expression was unreadable, though the faint strain in his eyes betrayed the weight of what he carried. "They're chanting your name," he said simply. Aria didn't turn. Who? Varkle Prime, the Tal colonies, even the fringe worlds. They call it the silence movement. She exhaled slowly. "I never wanted a movement." "That's the trouble with symbols," he said. "They start speaking without you." She looked at the horizon where storm clouds rolled across distant peaks. "What are they saying?" "That you showed restraint where others would have destroyed. That you proved peace doesn't mean submission. Do they understand the cost? They don't care. They're too busy turning you into hope." Aria finally turned toward him. "Hope built on fear doesn't last." Kieran nodded slightly. "Tell that to the Council. They're already blaming you for unrest across 4 sectors." "I didn't tell anyone to rebel." "You didn't need to." He handed her the tablet. The holographic feed flared to life, showing shaky footage from a crowd of alien students in a public square. Dozens of species stood together, their voices rising in a chant that echoed through the speakers. "Silence is survival. Silence is strength." The irony wasn't lost on her. She set the device down and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "They're chanting silence." "Poetic," Kieran said dryly. "And dangerous." Inside the training hall, 10 human envoys waited in disciplined rows, watching her. These were the silent operatives, diplomats, linguists, tacticians chosen to represent Earth in a galaxy still uncertain of its own stability. Aria walked between them, her boots silent on the metallic floor. "Words can start wars," she began, "but silence can end them faster." One of the recruits, a young man named Davin, raised his hand. "With respect, ma'am, how do you control perception when silence makes them imagine the worst?" She stopped before him. "You don't control perception. You prepare for the moment they realize their own reflection." He frowned slightly. "That's philosophy. That's survival," she said. "Every race that's ever invaded Earth imagined us as weak until they looked closer. What they fear isn't aggression. It's recognition." The recruits exchanged glances, unsure whether she was teaching or warning. Aria turned to the wall display, bringing up a hollow map of the Accord's collapsing structure. "This is what fear builds," she said. "Not strength, instability. Every rumor of human retaliation widens these cracks. Every silence deepens them." One woman asked, "So what's our objective?" Aria studied the map a moment longer. "To listen, to wait. And when they speak, make sure they hear themselves." Hours later, Kieran found her in the observation room, lights dimmed, a dozen holoscreens surrounding her with feeds from alien networks. "Riots on Varkle Prime, strikes in the Ventari trade systems," broadcasts showing banners with her image. A human face calm and unflinching, half lit by stormlight. "You're becoming an idea," Kieran said. Aria didn't look away from the screens. "Ideas are harder to kill than people." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "Director Voss wants to use this. She thinks your legend can pressure the Accord into concessions. She's building a narrative, humanity as a mirror of their own fear. That's manipulation. It's politics," he said evenly. "She'll start a war. Not if the galaxy starts it." "First," Aria turned, sharp now. "Is that what we are, Holt? Waiting for an excuse to prove we were right?" He met her gaze without blinking. "No, we're waiting for the moment they realize we were patient." She stared at him a long time, then looked back at the glowing screens. "Patience isn't peace. It's calculation. Sometimes they're the same thing," he said, far across the stars. The rebellion's first broadcast went live. Lyra Sen stood before a flickering camera, her face illuminated by the blue light of Varkal Prime's underground tunnels. The hum of machinery echoed faintly behind her as she addressed the galaxy. You feared the human because she didn't stand. You feared her silence because you saw yourself in it. If restraint is a crime, then we are all guilty. The feed spread faster than the council could contain it. Across colonies and trade worlds, millions listened. Some wept, others armed themselves. The movement had a name now, the Quiet Rebellion. When the footage reached Earth, Kieran and Voss viewed it together in the war room. Holographic light painted their faces in blue and red. She's quoting Aria, Voss murmured. Verbatim, Kieran folded his arms. And she's winning hearts. Uncontrolled revolts will destabilize every Accord hub. Trade collapses, fleets mobilize, the Drexians retaliate. And what do you suggest? He asked. We amplify the myth, Voss said coldly. Feed their fear before someone else weaponizes it. Kieran's voice dropped to steel. She's not a weapon. Voss turned, meeting his glare. Everything is a weapon if it survives. That night, Aria stood alone in the mountain silence, the wind sharp against her skin. The stars above looked impossibly still. She could feel the galaxy shifting, tugged between admiration and terror, between legend and reality. When she closed her eyes, she saw Lyra's face. The girl's voice echoed in memory. Calm isn't weakness. It's armor. She opened her eyes again, whispering into the cold air. Armor turns to prison if you never take it. Off. Footsteps approached softly behind her. Kieran, she quoted you. He said, I saw. You started something. You can't control. I never tried to control it, Aria replied. I tried to stop it from happening. He stood beside her, both watching the endless sky. The galaxy doesn't need gods. It needs balance. Then they should stop worshipping me. Kieran's jaw tightened. You can't unmake belief. No, she said. But I can refuse to lead it. He looked at her, seeing the same unshakable calm that had terrified an empire. You think silence will fix what noise started? It's not about fixing, she said quietly. It's about reminding them what silence sounds like before it becomes war again. The wind carried her words into the dark. Below, Echelon's lights flickered like embers under the mountains, patient, waiting, ready. Aria turned away from the stars and walked back toward the command center. The echo of her steps was soft, almost lost beneath the hum of the earth itself. The galaxy might chant her name, but she had work to do. The galaxy's noise grew louder with every silence Earth refused to break. News of uprisings spread through 1,000 networks, yet no human statement followed. Governments demanded clarity. Fleets deployed in fear. The stars themselves seemed to pulse with waiting. At the center of it all, Echelon Command remained calm. Too calm. Inside its underground command chamber, holographic projections flickered around the table where Ambassador Kieran Holt and Director Voss faced each other. The air vibrated with tension even the filtered atmosphere couldn't hide. They're moving fleets again, Voss said. The Drexians have occupied 3 Accord relay systems. Our silence is being mistaken for weakness. Kieran's voice stayed low, deliberate. No, it's being mistaken for thought. Voss's gaze sharpened. Thought doesn't stop armies. Neither does panic, he replied. Across the table, holographic displays mapped shifting red zones, systems caught between rebellion and fear. Each pulse represented a broadcast, a riot, a world whispering Aria Dren's name. Voss tapped the screen. Your Deathworld Girl turned patience into infection. Every world infected with her image burns. Kieran's jaw tightened. She didn't start this. The Accord did when they called survival a crime. Voss folded her arms. We can't keep waiting for diplomacy to fail. We need control of the narrative. He studied her face. You mean weaponize it? Semantics, she said coldly. Kieran leaned forward, voice like tempered glass. Humanity was built on restraint. You turn that into manipulation, and we become what they always feared. Fear keeps them predictable. Until it doesn't, he said. For a moment, only the hum of the hollow table filled the silence. Then she straightened, all steel and resolve. You think silence wins wars? Watch me prove it. Hours later, the entire Accord communication grid flickered. Then, darkness. Across hundreds of systems, every feed connected to human communication protocols went dead. Not hacked, not jammed, simply absent trade ships couldn't request clearance. Ambassadors couldn't reach Earth. No transmissions returned. The galaxy panicked. On Varkul Prime, rumors spread that Earth had unleashed a new weapon, one that erased voices instead of bodies. On Drexian channels, military analysts debated whether humanity had cloaked an invasion fleet. Fear bred faster than facts. It wasn't war. It was worse. It was uncertainty. Back on Earth, Kieran stood before the main viewport of Echelon's intelligence hub. The stars outside looked distant and cold. You shut them out completely, he said, not turning. Voss approached, her reflection joining his in the glass. Now they're talking to themselves. They'll reveal more in confusion than they ever did in peace, he faced her. This will spiral. That's the point. Controlled instability forces revelation, he shook his head. You don't control instability, Director. You ignite it and pray it burns the right direction. Voss's expression didn't change. Do you think I enjoy this? I've seen what open war costs. Silence is cleaner. Nothing about silence is clean, he said. In another wing of the base, Aria Dren watched the blackout unfold from her observation console. She'd been kept out of strategy meetings, but the shift in tone told her everything. The feeds were gone. The galaxy cut off. She found Kieran in the corridor outside the main hall. You did this? She asked. Voss did, he said quietly. And you let her? It's temporary. Temporary silence leads to permanent fear, she said. You taught me that. He hesitated. The Council was preparing a strike fleet. This stalls them. By confirming everything they already believe, she shot back. He didn't answer. The weight in his silence said enough. Aria stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. You're turning our restraint into theater. You think they'll see logic? They'll see ghosts. Better ghosts than bodies, he said. She stared at him for a long second. You sound like her. He looked away. Maybe she's right. Days passed. Panic became routine. Trade routes froze. Protests erupted on neutral worlds. The Accord fractured into paranoia, and Earth said nothing. The only sign of life came from one encrypted pulse, a single repeating signal across subspace frequencies. It carried no voice, no language, only a rhythmic sequence. Morse, ancient and unmistakable. Listen. Every system received it. None could decode its meaning. On Echelon's upper level, Aria stood beside the window, watching storms roll across Earth's surface far below the orbiting watchtower. The message pulsed faintly across her console. The same word again and again. Kieran entered quietly. It's working. She didn't turn. Working for who? For us, for them, for peace. Peace built on confusion isn't peace, she said. Then what would you call it? Stalling before collapse, he sighed. They're standing down, Aria. The Drexians halted their advance. The Council's in emergency talks. Every world's listening again. Because they're terrified, she said. That's not respect. That's surrender. He stepped closer, voice dropping. Sometimes fear buys time for understanding. She faced him, eyes cold and steady. And if understanding never comes? Then we act, he said simply. Her gaze didn't waver. You mean war? I mean choice, he replied. In the lower levels, Voss addressed the strategic board, a ring of human officers and intelligence directors. Her tone was razor-sharp. The Accord believes we've gone dark to prepare an offensive. Let them. They'll negotiate from fear rather than arrogance. Meanwhile, we strengthen our outer colonies, one of the officers asked. And if the Drexians strike first? Then they confirm their guilt before the galaxy. Publicly? Silence speaks louder than accusation, Voss said. Kieran entered mid-briefing, eyes fixed on her. And when they start shooting at ghosts, who answers? She smiled faintly. Ghosts don't bleed. Aria appeared at the door behind him. But people do. The room froze. Even Voss hesitated. You've made me a symbol, Aria said. Now you're turning silence into a siege. Do you really think they'll forgive manipulation once they see it? Voss's voice stayed calm. Forgiveness is irrelevant. We need control. You're mistaking control for order, Aria said. They're not the same. Voss stepped closer. You think silence is wrong? You inspired it. I showed them restraint, Aria replied. You're showing them fear. The two women stood inches apart, tension humming like static. Voss's expression hardened. You wanted understanding. This is how it starts, through discomfort. Aria's reply was quiet, but cutting. This isn't discomfort. It's dread, and dread never ends cleanly. The silence after her words was heavier than any shout. That night, Kieran found Aria alone again on the mountain terrace. The air was sharp, carrying the scent of rain and ozone. Far above, the orbital relay pulsed its single-word message through the dark. Listen, you know she won't stop, he said. I know, Aria replied. But neither will I. What will you do? What I should have done before. She looked up at the stars. If they're going to listen, they deserve truth. You'll break protocol. Protocols for peacetime. He studied her face, calm, yet resolute. Once you speak, there's no going back, she met his gaze. Maybe that's the point. The wind rose cold and electric. Below, Echelon's lights flickered like signals waiting to be born. Somewhere across the galaxy, the rebellion stirred again, whispers returning to words. The quiet war had begun, not with an attack, but with one human preparing to end the silence she had once created. The message left Earth at the speed of light, cutting through the void like a blade through silk. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't diplomatic. It wasn't approved. It was Aria Dren's voice, calm, human, unmistakable. If survival is rebellion, then every world deserves to survive. That single sentence shattered the quiet war's balance. Across the galaxy, millions heard her words within hours. Alien news grids looped her transmission endlessly. Fleets stopped mid-deployment. Rioters paused mid-chant. Even the council on the core world of Niveran halted its session. No one expected the Deathworld Girl to speak again. Inside the command chamber of Echelon, the moment the transmission ended, alarms erupted. Technicians scrambled across glowing panels, voices overlapping in panic. Red indicators flared across holographic maps. Unauthorized data bursts, interception attempts, external contact spikes. Kieran Holt entered fast, his expression caught between fury and awe. Tell me that wasn't her, he said. The technician swallowed. Direct feed from Echelon Array 7, sir. Her clearance code matched perfectly. Director Voss appeared from the far doorway, her face carved in ice. Cut every relay. Lock her access now. She already locked herself out, the tech replied. Signal terminated at source. Voss turned to Kieran. She's just undone everything. Kieran's jaw flexed. No, she's done what you refused to. Tell the truth. Her eyes narrowed. Truth doesn't stabilize empires. No, he said quietly. But lies destroy them faster. On Varkal Prime, Lyra Sen stood in the ruins of her underground station, the holographic image of Aria glowing faintly in the smoke. Every world deserves to survive. She repeated the words aloud, her voice trembling. Every world. Around her, exhausted rebels lifted their heads. Soldiers lowered weapons. In that single moment, silence filled the shattered tunnels. Not fear, but clarity. Record this, Lyra ordered. Broadcast it everywhere. Back on Earth, Aria sat alone in her quarters, the glow from the transmission panel still fading. Her reflection in the glass looked older, heavier, but her breathing was steady. When the door hissed open, she didn't turn. Kieran stepped inside, slow and deliberate. Do you know what you've done? Yes. You've made yourself the face of a galactic insurrection. I gave them words, she said. Not orders. He stepped closer, voice tightening. The difference doesn't matter now. The Drexians will treat it as provocation. Then they'll reveal who they are. He stopped just behind her, anger and admiration fighting inside him. You were supposed to be our balance. I still am. He stared at the back of her head. Balance doesn't mean fire. She turned finally, her eyes unwavering. No, it means light and darkness. They forgot that. Within 48 hours, chaos returned. The Accord's border systems erupted in riots. Entire colonies declared independence under banners showing her calm face and the phrase, "Every world deserves to survive." The Drexians, humiliated by her defiance, launched punitive raids on rebel colonies. Broadcasts of burning cities and silent skies flooded across the networks. The galaxy trembled between admiration and dread. In the council chamber on Nivaran, alien delegates shouted over one another, their voices overlapping in hundreds of languages. The High Speaker slammed a clawed hand on the dais. "She has destabilized our order. Humanity must be held accountable." From the human delegation's platform, Director Voss spoke without emotion. "We warned you about underestimating silence. Do not speak in riddles." The Drexian envoy roared. She looked directly at him. "We didn't start this." "You did. When you made silence a threat." The chamber fell quiet. Even the translation drones hesitated. At Echelon, the aftermath hit like a storm. Aria's name filled every intercepted signal. Some praised her as savior. Others cursed her as catalyst. Voss called an emergency meeting in the war room. The walls glowed with holographic projections of uprisings. Fleet movements, council decrees. Kieran entered last. Expression grim. "She's turned a spark into a wildfire," Voss said. "And you're still trying to smother it instead of understanding why it burns," he replied. "This isn't philosophy," Voss snapped. "It's survival." "Then listen to her," he said. "She understands survival better than anyone here." The director glared. "She's made us a target." "She's made us inevitable," he countered. The silence that followed was taut as wire. Finally, Voss leaned forward. "You defend her like she's infallible." "No," he said. "I defend her because she's right." Her expression hardened. "Then you're relieved of command." He smiled faintly, bitterly. "Then who'll you blame when silence isn't enough anymore?" That night, Aria stood outside under the open sky. The mountain air was sharp with ozone, the stars hidden behind a thin veil of clouds. The world felt smaller somehow, quieter despite the uproar beyond it. Kieran joined her, his steps slow. "They're calling for your arrest." "I expected that." "And the Drexians?" "They're moving fleets." He nodded once. "You broke the quiet war." "No," she said. "I broke the illusion it was quiet." He exhaled, long and low. "Do you regret it?" "I regret waiting this long." He studied her face. The cold light of the stars cut across her features, but her expression didn't waver. "What now?" he asked. "We don't hide," she said. "We answer. With what?" "With truth. They fear what we'll do. Let's show them what we are. And what are we? Survivors who learned control. Beings who endured death worlds until the universe called it discipline." He looked at her then, not as the girl from the tribunal, but as something else entirely. "You realize you've become their myth." "Then it's time I start living like it." Across the galaxy, her words kept spreading. On Varkal Prime, Lyra Sen's rebellion gained allies from unexpected corners, engineers, merchants, even Drexian defectors. The banner of the silence movement transformed into the right to endure, and for the first time the phrase "Deathworld Girl" was whispered not in fear, but in solidarity. On Nivaran, the council fractured. 2 member species withdrew from the accord entirely, citing moral disillusionment. The Drexians, furious, mobilized half their navy toward Earth's border. Yet Earth remained still. No retaliation, no threat, only listening. The galaxy, once united by noise, began to feel the weight of its own silence. Back on Earth, Kieran stood outside the comms center, watching the stars shimmer above the mountains. Voss appeared beside him, her usual control replaced by quiet fatigue. "She's reshaping the galaxy without firing a single shot," she said. "That's what happens when truth echoes," he replied. "You think she'll stop?" "No, but maybe the galaxy will finally learn to." Voss's tone softened. "You still believe silence can save us?" He looked at her, eyes tired but certain. "Silence never saved us. It just gave us time to decide what kind of noise to make." At dawn, Aria watched the horizon shift from black to blue. The first light caught the mountain peaks, washing them in gold. The storms that had rolled through the night began to fade. A new signal pulsed on her console. Not Earth's, not the Council's. From deep space, dozens of planets broadcasting the same phrase. "We are all Deathworlders now." Her lips curved slightly. Not a smile, something quieter. The galaxy had finally answered. The stars above Earth burned brighter that night. Even through the planet's thin veil of atmosphere, their light carried a strange stillness, as if the galaxy itself had paused to listen. The war never came. The fleets that once raced through space to destroy humanity had stopped mid-transit, their engines silent, their orders suspended. The transmissions that once screamed across the Accord's networks were replaced by a single pulse, steady, rhythmic, shared across every channel. "We are all Deathworlders now." That phrase, once whispered in fear, now circled the stars as declaration. In Echelon Command's grand observatory, the glass walls shimmered with holographic constellations. Ambassador Kieran Holt stood before the galaxy's projection, a vast spread of light showing which systems had joined the chant. More than half of the known sectors glowed in faint blue. Behind him, footsteps echoed softly. Aria Dren entered the room, dressed not in uniform, but in the simple gray of an instructor. Her presence carried the same composure that had terrified empires, quiet, unwavering, human. He didn't turn as he spoke. "It's spreading faster than any broadcast we've ever recorded. 12 major species just withdrew from the Accord. 3 others have declared neutrality." She approached beside him. "No shots fired?" "None. Not yet." "Then it's not over." He finally looked at her, studying the faint exhaustion in her eyes. "You expected them to surrender?" "I expected them to misunderstand," she said. "They always do." Kieran gave a faint, humorless smile. "Maybe this time they understood too much." "Maybe," she replied softly. "That's what frightens them." Far beyond Earth's orbit, the Drexian fleet floated in silence. Battle cruisers hung motionless in the dark, their plasma reactors cooled, their communication lines filled only with static. Inside the flagship Goreth's Pride, General Katorak paced across the command deck, claws scraping against the metal. "They chant it like a curse," he growled. "They call themselves Deathworlders." His second-in-command shifted uneasily. "They see it as strength." "It's contagion," Katorak snapped. "An infection of defiance." He turned toward the massive viewport. In the distance, Earth glimmered, small, fragile, defiant. "One human started this." One voice shattered order. The officer hesitated. "Shall we strike, General?" Katorak's reflection stared back from the glass. A soldier once certain of conquest, now staring into something incomprehensible. "No, not today. The galaxy has already turned on itself. We will wait." And for the first time in Drexian history, the warlord's claws trembled. On the mountain peaks of Echelon, dawn rose slow and gold. The air was thin and cold, carrying the hum of distant power lines and quiet human breath. Aria stood outside the command spire, the wind pressing gently against her hair. Director Voss approached from behind, her usual confidence tempered by fatigue. She stopped beside Aria, watching the horizon. "You ended it without firing a single shot," she said. Aria's gaze didn't waver. "I didn't end it. I reminded them what peace sounds like when it isn't forced." Voss crossed her arms. "They're calling this era the stillness. You're already written into their history." Aria's tone was calm. "History always prefers simple stories. You don't think it'll last?" "No, stillness never does. But maybe this one will last long enough for someone to build something better." Voss studied her for a moment. "You sound almost hopeful." "I sound realistic," Aria said. "Hope is a dangerous luxury." Inside the base, Kieran stood at the main console, reviewing transmissions from across the sectors. Reports showed collapsed power structures, abandoned councils, open dialogue between species that hadn't spoken in centuries. For the first time, the galaxy wasn't divided by empire or biology. It was united by pause. A technician turned from her station. "Sir, external traffic's requesting confirmation. They want to know Earth's official stance on the message." He hesitated, then said, "Tell them there is no stance." The tech blinked. "No statement?" "No statement," he repeated. "Just listening." Later, Aria joined him in the observation hall. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the atmospheric stabilizers. Beyond the glass, clouds drifted over the mountains, their edges lit gold by the rising sun. Kieran spoke without turning. "You realize what you've done?" She stood beside him. "I gave them a mirror." "They're calling you the voice of stillness," he said. "Ironic," she murmured. "I said the least of anyone." He looked at her now, eyes tired but warm. "You may have changed the galaxy forever." Aria's gaze returned to the sky. "Change isn't the goal. Understanding is, and if they never understand, then we'll keep teaching." In orbit, the Concorde drifted above the blue planet, a silent sentinel. Its hull reflected the sunrise, streaking light across the thin edge of atmosphere. In the command deck, unmanned systems pulsed faintly, transmitting silent signals across the void. Not commands, not warnings, just patterns meant to remind distant stations that Earth was still awake. From the bridge window, the view stretched endlessly, one small world surrounded by a galaxy finally quiet enough to notice it. Later that day, a new signal appeared on the long-range sensors. Weak, faint, but undeniably real. A broadcast from one of the outer colonies once destroyed during the first expansion wars. The voice that emerged was alien, weary, and clear. "This message is for the human who spoke. You were right. Silence doesn't mean surrender. It means we finally learned to listen." The transmission ended, but its echo lingered. Aria listened to it twice, then turned off the console. "That's enough," she whispered. At sunset, Kieran found her again at the terrace. The sky burned orange and red, the air trembling with soft wind. "They've named the movement after you," he said. "I know." "Does that bother you?" "Yes," she said simply. "Because it isn't mine." He stepped beside her, resting his hands on the railing. "You can't control what you inspire." "Maybe not," she said. "But I can remind them who they're following." He gave a quiet laugh. "And who's that?" She turned to him, expression steady. "Not a soldier, not a savior. Just a girl who learned that control doesn't mean silence, it means choice." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the distant hum of engines from a ship leaving orbit. Another convoy carrying envoys toward new beginnings. "Do you think they'll come back?" Kieran asked. "Not soon," she said. "But someday, and us?" She smiled faintly. "We'll still be here listening." Night fell slow and deep. The stars returned brighter than ever. The air held a faint hum, not from machines, but from something larger, quieter, older. Aria sat by the window of her quarters, hands resting on the cold glass. The reflection staring back wasn't the Tribunal Girl anymore. It was the calm after a storm that had reshaped the sky. She whispered, not to anyone, but to the void itself. "You were right, Mother. Strength isn't in shouting, it's in how long you can stay still." Outside, the earth turned slowly beneath her, wrapped in blue and gold. The last transmissions of the day faded into static. Far beyond, in alien skies, countless worlds stayed quiet, not in fear, but in thought. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy didn't roar, didn't fight, didn't command, it listened.